All right.
Great.
So
Well,
it
here
should
we
be
are.
going live.
Okay, let me know when.
Probably should be live right about now.
Yay, we're live. Yes. So here we are, Adam. And so the proud, the few. So we can answer questions or do whatever you'd like. You can ask me questions, or I can just extemporize.
Yeah, we can. I'd say let's get started with. Let's give an update on where the Kickstarter's at.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're closing in on 70,000. Our target is 80,000. We've got 2 days and change left, and we're feeling confident that the Space Command fans will step up and we will get the target, because it's that money's going to go into finishing Space Command, getting Space Command to people, and we have big plans, and money is the lubricant that keeps it all going. So that's the name of the game. But we are not stopped in any way, shape, or form. We are working on completing episodes, doing visual effects, doing music, doing sound mix, doing color correction, all of that stuff, and have even started filming the next episode. So it's exciting. It's exciting. And meantime, the Kickstarter campaign allows me to make Space Command, because it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's he's head of a big Hollywood company, a production company, and he was bemoaning the fact that Netflix and Amazon and so forth, they kind of rule the roost, and so he's not able to make the shows he wants to make because of they're cutting deals with Greg Berlanti and Shonda Rhimes and so forth. And so he's not able to move forward with what he wants to do, and he has impeccable taste. He's I mean, it's won Oscars and been nominated for Oscars and all this stuff, and and yet he's at their whim, and I don't have to be at their whim because I've got the fans, and that's a great thing, you know. I'm very lucky, and he's a very interesting guy, but he the problem is that the rules of the game are changing so quickly that to be able to stay in the loop is very challenging for most of my friends. That doesn't mean they can't get work done. I mean, Damon Lindelof just sold a new show to, I think, NBC, but you really have to be on your game. And, so that's how it goes. But that's where we are. Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yay. 3 cheers. And I mean, we have such incredible perks we're offering.
Yep.
So I'm thrilled.
And it's interesting. So we talked. We had you put out a video a little while ago about these new perks with the alien heads,
Yes.
and then somebody somebody bought Gidney. So
Yes.
there's Gidney and Cloyd. Somebody bought Gidney.
Yes.
And so Cloyd was left.
Right.
And then Gidney has backed out, but now Cloyd has been purchased.
Oh, I think she misunderstood which was which. She wanted the red one. I think they were just mislabeled. It's the same person.
Okay.
Yeah, she was emailing me, so I think it was just which was Giddy, but she wanted the red one.
Because I saw two different names, but yeah.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
I think we're cool. So,
okay, but so there is still one alien head left.
Yes.
And not only that, but you can, of course, you'll get to be filmed wearing that costume as an alien in Space Command, and you'll also get to you'll be on set, obviously, to be filmed as that, and you'll get to be with the cast and crew, whoever's filming that day. And
well, one thing that's really fun, and one thing I really like about how we're doing Space Command and how the 21st century allows us to do this is that our fans and audience are able to be part of the creative process, to be part of every aspect of this that they choose to be. Back when I was a kid growing up with Star Trek and Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and so forth, there was no way you could be in it. There was no way you could play an alien in it. You couldn't, write to, Rod Serling and say, hey, I'd like to play a role. It was like, that's not how it worked. And you couldn't be in direct dialogue, and you couldn't make suggestions and all of these things. And now it's a two-way conversation. I really prefer that. It doesn't in any way inhibit me creatively. And fortunately, I'm a fairly social person, and that so that I don't feel my privacy is being invaded, or that I'm losing anything by being in this wonderful dialogue with my audience. And I love the fact that I can reach out directly to the entire world. Very, very fun, and so no complaints at all. So
Great. We have some people watching already. Ziggy says, "Hey."
Ziggy. So yes, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to talk about anything that anyone wants to know about. Or I could just grab things at random from within reach and talk about them. That's always
Yeah.
a possibility. Or at some point I'm going to do a video, a Mr. Sci-Fi video about that wall, because on that wall are photos of many of the people who've been my friends and mentors: Harlan Ellison, George Clayton Johnson, Ted Sturgeon, Gene Roddenberry's on that wall, many others,
And
and
some of whose names are immortalized in Space Command.
yes, they are. They
As
are,
characters.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think it'll be great fun to do that sooner rather than later, and so
Yeah.
that's on the agenda. But meantime, I'm reading through the new book, my new manuscript of Greenlighting Yourself, making copious notes, and as soon as I finish, I'm only a few pages away from finishing it, because you write it, but then you want to read through it and see how it flows. You want to see if you've repeated yourself or forgotten to add things, and
Right.
so it'll be a few more minutes to finish reading the manuscript. Then I'll just go back and type in all the anecdotes. And so I make myself tons of notes, so.
And for those watching, that's you're referring to Greenlighting Yourself,
Yes.
which is available as a perk on our Kickstarter campaign.
Yes, and for those of you who are discerning, you'll notice I wrote a note on that. I don't know if you can see it. That says Jack Benny, it stinks. That's not Jack Benny's blurb for the book. It's basically I'm talking about judging your own work, and there's a great joke, which was Jack Benny was one of the great radio comedians, and he had this running gag one season where he wrote a song and he tried to get all these singers to perform it, Frank Sinatra and so forth, and they all turned him down, Vic Damone or whomever. And so finally, after weeks of this running gag, he's walking through the park at night and he's sort of humming the song to himself. And then he finally stops and he says, "I just realized why no one will perform my song. It stinks." And
very good.
So I have a chapter in Greenlight Yourself called
It stinks.
my work stinks, and what do I do about it?
Yeah.
And like, because again, if you want to have a career, you have to be able to look at your own work and have other people look at your work and know when it's working and when it's not. And that's going to be a subjective thing. But still, there's sort of like an upper level and a lower level, where if your work sinks beneath a certain level, then it's not working at all, and you need to know that. So that's some of it. So
yeah. Well, we've got a lot of questions going here, including our first super chat of the day, which is from Gun Griffin.
Hello.
And asked a random writing question.
Sure. Absolutely.
Why has military sci-fi in Hollywood feel more like high school dramas these days instead of real military experience?
Because most of the writers haven't been through the military. When you look at Star Trek and Twilight Zone, Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry were in World War II. Rod Serling was a paratrooper in the Pacific Theater. Roddenberry was a bomber pilot. I mean, these guys had been in the military and they knew how to write that. And of course, World War II was a real war, a serious war, and and so they felt the weight of having to save freedom. And they were scarred by it. Certainly Rod Serling was, but more often than not, the people who are writing the military now, they might have an advisor on the show, but they themselves probably have not been through the military. They certainly, or even if they have, they haven't taken lessons from it that inform their work, their writing. So that's part of it. But. And also there's the larger issue of having something to say. I mean, you want, there are many TV shows and movies that are basically about nothing, and so that's a bigger problem, of course. But
right.
But that's why Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and Star Trek are my guiding stars. Because they were very very focused on saying something meaningful. And they, of course, were made during a period of great upheaval between the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement and all these other things.
Right.
It was an amazing time. And these writers, fortunately, these writers and producers fortunately took their jobs very seriously and knew that they had a great opportunity because they were reaching maybe 30 million people or more per broadcast. So because there were only three networks at the time, and it was an enormous power of persuasion and a great opportunity. And they
Right.
didn't drop the ball. They did their job. They were great.
And I know you have heavily consulted with people in the real current Air Force Space Command.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, we've talked to people in Space Command. We've talked to people in NASA and at JPL and the Johnson Flight Center. And I have many friends. One of my friends drives the Mars rover as his day job. He's got two wristwatches. One is Earth time and one is Mars time. So he is definitely the coolest guy around. And so yeah, I mean, I know a lot of science fiction writers, both in television and in books. So I'm very kind of plugged into to all of that stuff. Yeah, definitely. And
uh, our first, so going, I always do our super chats first,
yay,
and then go back to our regular questions, which isn't a regular question, but I wanted to highlight this comment
please,
because I think it's very profound. From Ravi Komatiredi. I hope I said that right.
enough.
I'm sure Ravi is right, but
Yeah,
he says, I'm a huge fan of efforts like Space Command
thank
that
you.
bring back the idea of teams of people who think through problems they encounter versus just pulling out laser pistols and shooting first.
Yes, and that's partially that's Elaine's influence very strongly because um, Elaine is for those who know Elaine, they know that she's better, smarter, deeper than me, and you know, and but the reality is that before I knew her, she was involved in the civil rights movement in the marches. She performed in a play about the life of Martin Luther King during the Poor People's March on Washington, and so she was involved in massive protests where the army surrounded them, where people were murdered. She was in the thick of things, and so uh, that was definitely a period where you really had to look at what you were doing and say, am I a good guy or am I a bad guy? And not, and that's an important question. I mean, because most people, if they just assume they're good guys no matter what they do, I was thinking about this today. There's the Israeli Palestinian conflict. Elaine lived in Israel and she's very appalled by what Israel's doing now. And not to get into politics, but, there's an interesting question about atrocious acts at a distance because there were 60 children killed in those Israeli bombing raids. And you wonder, like, let's say you had put those 60 children when they were alive in front of Benjamin Netanyahu and given him a gun and said, can you kill these 60 children one at a time, or given him a knife? And he wouldn't have been able to. He would have been appalled at even the suggestion. And yet, because he's able to order a bombing strike where he doesn't have to see this, these children are killed. And I think any sane person, any person who's not a total psychopath, would not want 60 children killed for any reason, anywhere. And yet, terrible acts are allowed because they're can be done so antiseptically by those in the planes or those at firing the guns at long distance. And so again, these become issues of conscience and issues of morality. And again, I'm not saying that the Palestinians were right to fire several thousand missiles indiscriminately into Israel, but I'm saying that I view the struggle as compassion against cruelty.
Right.
And I think that when you take it to that, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be solved easily, but it does mean that the moment you see someone as human and having as much justification for living and having a life that's meaningful as you do, it changes the equation. And so that's why in Space Command, when our people encounter others who are supposedly on the other side, they have to really look at that other side and say, well, wait a minute, what am I doing here? What are my actions actually accomplishing or causing? And I think that's a much more interesting story than just good guys versus bad guys.
Right.
because in the real world, most people think they're the good guys, no matter what they're doing. And that's not 100% true. So there are some, every now and then you meet someone who knows that they're a terrible person and a villain, but that's not usually the case.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important. I think artistically it's important, and in terms of my responsibility to the real world, it's important. So that's yeah.
Yeah. Well, not to change the subject,
No,
but
please
our
do.
next question definitely goes in a different direction.
Sure.
From Herbert Thornton,
Hi, Herbert.
if you could own the rights to any property, which IP would it be?
Huh. Well, I mean, if I could have any property, it'd probably be Star Trek, because
Yeah.
I'd love to be taking a crack at that. It's such a great universe. I mean, I much prefer the Star Trek universe to the Star Wars universe. But that's again an aspect of when I grew up, because Star Trek was the great science fiction TV show. And whereas if I'd been 10 years younger, Star Wars would have been it for me, as it was with JJ. But yeah, Star Trek would probably be the one. I mean, every now and then I come across a story or a novel or something where I think, gee, it'd be neat to adapt that, but that's not my whole thing. I can certainly come up with ideas on my own.
Great. Wonderful. So our next question is from Ziggy,
Hi, Ziggy.
uh, who wants to know when is the next episode released, and we know this one because we said it a bit, but for
Yeah.
those of you who
Well,
don't know, yeah,
by Christmas or before, as soon as we're getting toward being done with the second hour, and we're going to release that, of course, and then we're cranking along on the third hour. I mean, we've shot them, and then there's the fourth hour. Now, this is not including the bonus 2-hour episode Ripple Effect, which we did, nor does it include the prequel audio play, which we also did already.
correct.
And so, but yeah, we're just cranking along, and then there's the other shows on the Showrunners Network. I mean, we're ramping up to do an awful lot of stuff.
And in
And
fact, we're planning the world premiere of the first 2 hours
yes,
at the famous Grauman's Chinese Theater.
at the Chinese Theater. And so that should be great. And again, we're all feeling our way as the pandemic starts to lose some of its grip on the world. But so everything is sort of like we're taking it step by step. But yes, that is the plan.
Right.
We had planned to have a red carpet premiere earlier, but then the pandemic
Last year,
hit.
yeah.
Yeah, and then the pandemic hit. So, but I think it'll be great fun to have all of our friends there with us, and
Right.
our actors, and really really see it on the big screen. It's going to be great fun.
Very cool. And then, of course, you out there listening can join us at that premiere, as there are limited number of tickets available as perks in the Kickstarter campaign.
Yes.
Go to spacecommandkickstarter.com. I've dropped the link in the chat.
Cool.
But you can get a ticket to go see the premiere and mingle with the stars.
Yeah, it's really
like
fun.
me and Mark,
Yay. No, but it's really fun to meet the actors, particularly. I mean, I love meeting writers and directors as well. But again, I love how science fiction is permeable. Most genres aren't. I mean, if you want to meet Tom Cruise, good luck. But you can meet Star Trek actors and whomever at these conventions when it isn't a pandemic. And I love the fact that science fiction is so welcoming and so friendly, and the fact that you can meet your heroes, and it's just super cool. And I'm really really glad to be part of the science fiction universe.
Yeah. Our next question is from Gregory Krug, one of our longtime watchers and listeners. And an interesting question too, because I mean, I'm sure you've been interviewed so many times, and we've had so many of these Ask Me Anythings.
Yes.
Is there a question that you are tired of being asked?
No, not really. I mean, again, I don't get the same question a lot. It's so it's fine. I mean, I also, because I'm powered by enthusiasm. I mean, uh, I for a while, I mean, the question that's always, uh, that's freakish in terms of my knowledge is anything related to Twilight Zone, because I'm the world's expert on the Twilight Zone. And so that's pretty crazy when I get into those conversations, because I know so much. But I don't mind it. It's just that at various times, particularly when the book first came out, people just assumed I would spend all my time watching Twilight Zone episodes in my spare time. And of course, once I wrote the book, I didn't intend to do that because it was, it's all burned in here. But it's fun. No, I always welcome questions. I never mind them.
Wonderful. So our next question is from P. McGinnis, and kind of a three-parter here. So first of which, what was the first professional job you ever had? What was the first for Elaine? And the first professional job you both worked on together?
Interesting question. It depends on how you define professional job. I mean, I grew up as an artist and as a writer, both when I was a kid. And in a way, the first professional job would be my mom was working selling advertising space on book covers that were handed out to high school kids. And so there was a shop, a women's clothing shop called Tracy's Turtle. And it had this graphic of a turtle with an umbrella and a hat, a smiling turtle. And the woman said, well, can you reduce this down to the size it would fit on a book cover?
Yeah.
And it was like a big big illustration thing that's like 3 or 4 feet or whatever. And my mother said, oh yes, of course, our art department can. And so then she came home. I was 13 years old, and she said, "You're the art department." And so she paid me, I don't know, $5 or $10, whatever, to reproduce that Tracy's turtle drawing. And so that was the first time I think I was paid money for my abilities. But then when I was 18, a radio play of mine aired on KPFK. It was a parody of science fiction conventions and radio shows and movies and TV shows and all of that, called Lobotomy. And I wrote that and directed and acted in it. But the first time I earned money for my writing was when I went to the Clarion Writers Workshop and sold my first short story, Leader of the Club, which I actually read in its entirety on Mr. Sci-Fi. So if you just type in Leader of the Club, you'll find me reading that story. It's about a story in which Disney takes over the world, literally. And
that's right.
yeah, and it's fun. I wrote that when I was 18 in my first English class at UCLA, and Damon Knight read it when I was at Clarion when I was 19, and he bought it for $50. And so my first sale was $50, and my second sale was $20,000 for the advance for the Twilight Zone companions. So that was a pretty good bump. And and then I was writing for animation and all of that stuff. In terms of Elaine, I mean, she had her work off Broadway as a writer director before I knew her, but that wasn't being done for the money necessarily. I mean, they probably had ticket receipts, but nothing insanely overflowing with wealth. But when we got together, we started writing collaboratively on shows like Lazarus Man and so forth. But so it's varied. It's sort of like, but we also would be paid to read scripts and give notes and all of those things. So with Elaine, it was. But also she was working as an actress in New York before I knew her, so she was getting various kinds of gigs and as an actor. So that was probably her first professional thing. So pretty fun.
Very cool. Let's see. Let's go with Herbert Thornton has another question.
Okay.
Why am I just now seeing The Prisoner? British 60s show that is remarkable.
Yeah. It's a great show. And Elaine and I stayed in Portmeirion where it was shot in Wales. Amazing, amazing place. It's a great show. I saw it when it first aired in the late 60s when I was a kid. And it was just unlike any other show. It's just remarkable. It's one of my favorite shows to this day. I'm so glad that television now allows you to watch anything you want to whenever you want to, and so I'm glad that people can see it, because it definitely is one of the great TV shows of all time, and it's Patrick McGowan's greatest piece of work. So 3 cheers for him.
Great. Our next question is from Solomon Kane, who asks, Were the original Space Command episodes based on actual classified space exploration?
No, but I'm so interested in the fact that the government is now acknowledging that UFOs are real, and it's very. I'm very interested to see where this leads. I mean, it's a remarkable change because I grew up from the 60s on reading about UFOs and very aware that the government was deliberately making it a subject of silliness to discredit anyone who believed in them. And again, I don't believe necessarily they're from an extraterrestrial civilization. I don't know what they are, but definitely
And
they're,
that's the definition, is it's unexplained,
yes,
unidentified.
but definitely the capabilities of some of these craft on these Navy videos are astonishing, and we don't have that technology. So we'll see where it goes from here, but it's
Yeah,
definitely of great interest.
very good. Let's go on to Rose Kirby says hello from England, and
Rose,
she wants to know, will there be any chance that you'll be at Star Trek Las Vegas at Rio All Suits? So yeah, is there any chance you'll be at Star Trek Las Vegas?
I have to find out when it's being held, or what's going on with that. It's possible, definitely. I should look into it. We should make a note to look into that, Adam.
Yeah,
Because yeah, sure, I'd be happy to.
because I
And
know we did last year. We did the Star Trek online convention. We had a booth, a table, a
yeah,
virtual table.
yeah.
Yeah,
But the great part is when they flew me there as a guest when they had the 20th anniversary of Far Beyond the Stars, and I got to meet a number of the Star Trek actors, and that led to me casting Gates McFadden in Sweet Haven. And I love so many of those actors, and I'm very eager to work with them. Sadly, I was talking with Rene Auberjonois about playing a role before his passing, and I think today is his birthday. Had he still been with us, so, but he was really a remarkable guy. So yeah.
great. We are all caught up for now. So, guys out there, if you're watching, feel free to send us a question. In the meantime,
Cool.
the website is spacecommandkickstarter.com, where you can go and contribute to our Kickstarter campaign. There
Yeah,
are only a few days left.
very short. It's ticking
we're
down.
we're closing in on the finish line. We're
Yeah,
like, it's in sight. It's
yeah.
almost there.
and it's
Yeah,
and it's all or nothing. So if we don't hit 80 grand, I mean we're around hovering around 70. If we don't hit 80 grand, we get nothing, except
right.
the anguish of defeat. And so that's so if you have if you've been wanting that Space Command producer credit or walk on roll or whatever, or even T-shirt, go there now and grab what you want,
Every
because
little bit helps.
it all helps. You never know. I mean, I'm very surprised at where um, these wonderful things come from. They're from such unexpected corners, and I mean, one of my favorite things that happened to me in recent years was, I'm recognized as Mr. Sci-Fi where in England or here or whatever. And one time I was walking the dogs here in West Hollywood, and there was a Russian family across the street, because we live in a neighborhood that has Russians as well as gay people and so forth. It's a wonderful, wonderful little city within a city, and it was this Russian family, sort of heavy set Russian family, walking sort of laterally and slowly. And the man saw me across the street and he yelled out, "Mr. Sci-Fi, I love your videos, especially the ones on Star Trek Discovery." I said, "Thank you." But it was the last thing in the world I would have expected to hear from them.
Who
And,
knew?
but it was great. It was great. And it spoke to how universal science fiction is. You can never tell who's
Yeah,
going to be a fan. And I love that. And so it's just great. And, the more the merrier.
great. Rose says the Star Trek Las Vegas is going to be the 11th to the 15th of August.
Mm. Is
So
it a,
close to your birthday.
yeah,
Yours and Elaine's birthdays.
I assume it's a Zoom thing, but yeah, we should look into it. We'll check it out.
Yeah. So our next question is from Keith,
Mm-hmm.
who asks, have you heard anything about a new Stargate show?
Yes. not much though. You know, MGM was just acquired by Amazon, and there's some talk that they might be making a new Stargate series. I mean, again, the corporate thinking always, the first thing that anytime any corporate entity acquires a studio or anything that has um, a library of film and TV properties, they look over the properties to see what they can uh, do to max. For one thing, the Amazon paid $8 billion for MGM. So, and most of the classic MGM movies were bought by Turner many years ago. So they no longer are owned by MGM. But certain properties like the James Bond films and so forth and Stargate, they are owned by MGM. So then they always look to what are the properties they can maximize in terms of profitability to help float the huge amount of money they just spent. So that's where they look first. So they'll clearly be looking at, you know, all the things that they can. So a Stargate series definitely makes sense moving forward. So, you know, they hopefully they'll make it, and hopefully it'll be good. You know, it's science fiction is extremely durable in that way, and you know, we all have seen disappointing uh, films and TV shows of science fiction franchises, but we've also seen great sequels like Aliens, you know, and so I'm always rooting for everybody. I want everyone to succeed, and sadly they don't.
Absolutely. Let's see. We have a question from El Johnorino, another frequent viewer.
Yes.
And hello again. So he wants to know, who do you look, or what is it? Who do you go to look at your drafts without fear of them being yes men?
Elaine reads all of my scripts. She reads all of my work, and I hugely trust her opinion. It's very rare that I have anyone else look over my work before I put the final stamp on it. In the
And
show,
she's especially not afraid to tell you what's what.
yeah, she's not living in fear of me by any means. She doesn't be a yes man. But in terms of Sweet Haven, Rockney O'Bannon and I worked out the show and outlined the pilot. But then Elaine came aboard to co-write the pilot with me, and so the three of us are pretty much engaged in that conversation. So
Right.
yeah, but again, you really have to choose your critics wisely, because you need people who make the work better and who are sort of on your wavelength. And so Elaine is really that for me. Always has been.
Great. We have another super chat from Ravi.
Yay.
Um, didn't even comment, just gave us money. Great.
It's good.
Thank you, Ravi.
Like money.
Yeah. Let's see. We have Ziggy says, hopefully Amazon will do something good with Stargate and RoboCop.
Yes. And again, you know, it always boils down to who they choose as the showrunner / creator of the show. And you know, because the trick is always finding something fresh that's still within that universe. I think Blade Runner 2049, for all of its flaws, was a very good job of telling a different story in that universe.
Yeah.
That was and they, I think they solved the problem of, well, it's 2019 now, so how? And they said, well, this is a different universe where the technology has moved forward differently, and that kind of got them off the hook. But it's you know, it's always the challenge to tell a story that can stand on its own, but within the parameters of whatever that universe is. And each of these universes has its own separate rules, and you have to respect those rules, because if you go in and you don't know the genre or that specific franchise, you got a big problem. And so
Yeah.
that, you know, and I've seen that many a time.
Which is why I'm curious and nervous about Amazon's venture into the Lord of the Rings series,
Yeah, we'll
which they're
see.
shooting.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest disappointment of that kind was just how badly Game of Thrones, you know, bungled the ending. And I think it was just that all of them were on to their next job, and their heads were not in it.
Yep.
Particularly their hearts were not in it, because they just threw that show away, and it was such a shame after doing such a superlative job for so long.
There were
And
so many ways it could have gone so much
yep,
better, you
yep.
know.
And I actually did a Mr. Sci-Fi where I talked about how I would have ended the show,
Right.
and that was very interesting to do. So yeah.
Next question, another Herbert Thornton question.
Hi.
I'm curious how you got Nichelle Nichols. What is she like?
Yeah, well, she's terrific. She's wonderful. The way I got Nichelle Nichols was, um, I met her when I was 10, and she was just phenomenal. She gave me a number of Star Trek scripts, her copies, and gave me a signed photo of herself, and we corresponded for a time. And and then I hadn't seen her, since then, really. And and then I ran into her at a convention recently. Well, basically, what it was each year we're at Comic Con and we have a booth at Comic Con, a Space Command booth, and someone called me, a friend of mine, and they said, "Can I ask you a favor?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Nichelle Nichols needs a booth to do a signing at. Can we use yours?" And I said, "Of course you can." And so Nichelle was signing at my booth, and I thought, gosh, she'd be great in Space Command. So I started the conversation going with her manager, who was there at the time, and then I met her son and was talking with him, and one thing led to another, and off we went. And I think she's wonderful in the scene we gave her. I named her character after Octavia Butler, the famed science fiction writer who I actually knew. Who's no longer with us, sadly, but she was one of the great science fiction writers, and and it was a dream come true. I mean, when we shot the scene for Space Command, I brought the albums I kept, the scrapbooks I kept when I was 10, that included the letter and the photo that she'd given me back then, and I showed it to her, and she signed my albums on that day that we shot the episode. So it was just a dream come true. It was great, and at the end of the day, because I deliberately designed the scene so we could shoot it in her house, so she wouldn't have to move a lot because she's in her 80s now. And we made it very comfortable for her. And then when I was at the end of the day, she said, "Thank you for gracing my home," which was such a sweet thing to say. And so she's one of the great people, and I'm so glad that Star Trek gave her the opportunity to um, present her wonderful self to the world.
Yeah, and those scrapbooks that include that letter and
Yes,
photos and everything are available as perks
yes,
on the Space Command Kickstarter, spacecommandkickstarter.com.
yes,
Again,
yeah,
yeah, as part of the Star Trek Superfan perk.
yes.
Uh,
Yeah, because again, when I was a kid, Star Trek came on when I was 10, and I just collected every article, every photograph, everything I could find, including all of the TV guide listings for the original run of the 79 episodes. So it was, it was because I didn't know if it was ever going to air again. I didn't know what was going to happen with it. I was there protesting to get a third season outside NBC with my little protest sign, and there was a million of us who wrote letters to NBC. I was one of them, and we got the third season. Thank God, because the show might not have ever really gotten effectively into syndication if
yeah,
it had that third season.
we have another super chat from our friends at Spacefaring Civilization,
Cool.
who says, "Love hashtag optimistic sci-fi."
Yes, yes, and
Yeah,
again, it's not just optimistic science fiction. It's where you take the real world and you say we can make a future worth living in. So it's not turning away from reality. It's not saying, oh, that's too disturbing, I'm going to write something totally escapist, because escapism can be fun, but what Star Trek showed us is that you can actually inspire people where you make the real world better because of what they take away from the show. And so that's why I love optimistic science fiction. I think it's great. And so I mean, and beyond that, one thing that science fiction can do, as can any literature really, is it can let people know they're not alone and that their view of things is not that they're not crazy. I think when we did Far Beyond the Stars, I thought it was a very important episode, and for a major studio to make a show in which cops murder a black teenager, and our hero says, "You murdered him," and their attitude is basically, "Yeah, well, so what?" I mean, that was astonishing 20 years ago, and it really holds up. And now with Black Lives Matter, you see how prescient it was and how timely, and and brave. I think I all kudos to Ira Bear. I mean, he was the one who first came up with the notion of let's make this about race, and I wholly embraced that, and I thought it was brilliantly executed in every way.
very good. Our next question is from Mark Gardner, the director of the Vulcan Language Institute.
Yes.
And he asks, did you ever get Rene Auberjonois
Auberginois, yeah.
Auberginois on film before he passed?
No, sadly. Again, we talked, and by the time I was offering him the role, he already had cancer, knew his days were numbered, and but he was a very gracious man. And one thing he told me, which is really fun, is some years ago I went to his house, and he said about the house, he said, "This is the house that Benson bought and Deep Space Nine saved." And I thought that was really interesting and very telling about the actor's life. I mean, every actor's life, because there's always going to be ups and downs, and you can never assume that there's always going to be millions in the bank and all that stuff. So, yeah. So I'm going to put that into green lighting yourself. That little story.
Great. Rose Kirby wants to know, what do you think of the revamped version of Mystery Science Theater 3000?
I've never been a big fan of Mystery Science 3000, interestingly enough. It's like, it's just, for me, it just doesn't really grab me. I guess it's because I hold science fiction in such esteem, and although they're ridiculing bad films for the most part, it's just, it was like Fractured Flickers, which was a Jay Ward show that satirized silent films. It's like, I respect the filmmakers, I respect the actors and the directors and the writers who try to make something, anything.
Right.
It's such a titanic effort to make anything in film or television that that I don't really want to laugh at their efforts, no matter, even if the effort falls short. So, but again, that's not to say I don't think people have every right to love Mystery Science 3000, and maybe someday, I'll watch an episode and go, wow, I love this, and then I'll watch all of them, and then I'll be talking about it incessantly, and people will start shunning me, and I'll be left alone.
There
But
you go.
that's a day sometime in the future.
Great. Let's see. El Jonorino says, in the recent sneak peek, I was taken by Ethan McDowell's acting in The Bridge Call with the guy who killed his wife.
Yes.
Played by, of course, Ferran Tahir.
Yes, he does a great job.
That was a master class in how to flare emotions under the surface.
Yes.
Was that directed, or was that all him?
No, it was directed. It was, though he's a wonderful actor and he can do it, but
Right.
it's perfect. It's great. I mean, because the fun part of that whole thing is you see this guy on the screen, and that Jack Kemmer is just devastated and angry, and there's a history there, and it doesn't need to be overtly stated, and I love that. Ethan's great in that scene. And it's funny because he's one of the winners of the talent search, so we found him out of 7,000 inquiries, 1,200 videos, and there's not been a single moment that we've doubted our choice. He is just so wonderful in the role, and just goes from strength to strength to strength. So we've had a wonderful collaboration with him.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's see. Herbert Thornton wants to know, are you featured in the 80s sci-fi doc In Search of Tomorrow? And are you featured in Charles Beaumont Twilight Zone's Magic Man doc? And where can I find it?
I think so. I don't frankly remember.
Been so long.
No, I'm in many documentaries. James Cameron's History of Science Fiction, I'm in that. And whenever anyone asks me if I want to be in something, if I have any knowledge about the subject, I'll say yes. I know the people who made the Beaumont documentary, and I like the Beaumont documentary. I just don't remember if they interviewed me in it. If they did, great. I hope I was coherent. It would seem to me like I would be someone they would interview, given my expertise. In terms of the other one, it's possible. I don't know. I'll have to watch those things and see if I'm in them. But it's funny because I appear in I was gonna say I appear in odd places. Like for instance, on the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Blu-ray or DVD, I have an audio commentary of one of the episodes that I wrote, and I think I do the same thing with Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters. So I pop up in all these odd things because my career has been so varied in certain areas, and in fact, even I think on Thriller, the Thriller disc set, my Blu-ray set, my friend Doug Hayes wrote and directed an episode, and I did an audio commentary on it because Doug was one of the great directors of The Twilight Zone. So you can find me in odd, strange, diverse places.
Definitely. In fact, speaking of He-Man and real Ghostbusters and everything, for those of you who don't know, I recently interviewed you
Yes.
on my animation podcast, Inside Animation,
Yes.
where we talked about your writing for all those in Smurfs and all those other animated shows.
And we posted that on Mr. Sci-Fi to
Yes.
reach Mr. Sci-Fi fans. And again, it's I was very lucky that I got to write for so many iconic shows, and there was a wide variety of styles in those shows. So for instance, Super Friends was a very different style from Real Ghostbusters. Real Ghostbusters was different from, He-Man or Black Star or whatever. And I really enjoyed the variety. I really enjoyed writing for all these different characters, and it gave me the skills that then allowed me to work in live action so effectively. Right. So yeah, great fun.
Very cool. Ann Daly wants to, or Daly wants to know, do the Back to the Future films count as sci-fi?
Yes, they're time travel. They absolutely do, and they deal with paradoxes and all of that stuff. Yes. And my friend Ron Cobb, who was one of the great designers, he designed the DeLorean time machine along with Andy Probert. And Cobb, of course, was on Alien and Aliens and Total Recall and many great films. And I knew him since I was 16. We lost him last year, sadly, but he was one of the greats. And then, interestingly enough about Ron Cobb, the night I met him, he showed me 10 concept paintings he had just been hired to do to help a friend sell his screenplay, and they were lined up along the baseboard of the apartment. 10 original oil paintings. They were gorgeous, and they were the concept paintings that sold Alien.
Wow! Oh yeah, yeah.
I met him. That was the first night I met Cobb, and recently I was on eBay, and I've just put in a bid for a drawing he did in high school of a nuclear bomb exploding and spreading out over a city and into the water with the ships. And, years later, he would do a much more elaborate version of that illustration, but it was really fun to find it from when he was 17. So hopefully I'll win that auction.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
very cool.
Probably shouldn't have mentioned it.
Don't you go on eBay and buy it. Very good. Let's see. Mark Gardner wants to know, do you have any additional film of Mira Furlan that you can use, or is her character now gone?
We have footage on Mira that the audience hasn't yet seen, but we have. It's in the cut of the second part of Redemption. One could probably look at some of the convention appearances she did for us and things like that, but we really haven't considered that. I mean, one could cobble together additional moments for Mira, but we really haven't thought to do that because she did such a brilliant job in the work she did for us. We really don't want to in any way cannibalize her work. We want to honor the performances that she gave. So, but fortunately,
and you and Elaine are writing her character out.
Yes. Yeah. There's a natural point that occurs, and so it's not difficult to do that. Though we had intended her to be a viewpoint character and be throughout the series, and so we're very sad that we didn't get the opportunity to do that. And but who could have ever dreamed she would get West Nile virus and leave us? So yeah. Really crazy. Really, I mean, my God. But thank God her work will stand. I mean, you can watch Babylon 5, you can watch Space Command or Lost, and there she is in all of her glory.
And there are, I should mention, there are several perks, tributes to Mira Furlan. There's the special Mira Furlan tribute T-shirt.
Yes.
Which has the cover of the special Mira Furlan issue of the comic book, which is issue number 2.
That's right. That's right.
And that itself is a perk that you can get as
Yes.
well.
And we're also offering a perk of a special Mira Furlan package that includes the all of the episodes of Space Command she's in, and the prequel, and the comic book, and all of the video from her various convention appearances that she did for Space Command. So that is a perk. I don't think we put it up yet, but if
Not yet.
if anyone wants to email me at markzickery@gmail.com, I think it's $200 or whatever. And but definitely we have a lot of Mira Furlan content that's nowhere else.
Yep.
And but she was a dear soul. She was not only a wonderful actress, she was a dear friend. And Elaine and I were both knocked back when we learned of how ill she was. So really, really terrible.
Going back to the Stargate discussion, Spacefaring Civilization got the tail end of the Amazon buying MGM discussion. He wants to know, does that mean we're getting more Stargate?
Possibly, probably. I would say it's a strong likelihood. I mean, again, they're going to want to maximize all of the properties they have. It's funny how that works, because often studios think of it practically as money just sitting on the ground waiting to be picked up, because the out, particularly for a TV show, the outlay of cash is very small compared to like a big blockbuster movie. And depending on how you structure it and how ambitious it is, you can really turn a very, very good profit. And so I'm sure they'll do it. Let's just hope they hire the right people to bring that about.
Quint 150 asks, how did you pick the villain, the guy in the shower cap? I think he's referring to Dorn Nevin.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he's not the villain.
No.
He's an adversary, but not a villain. And as you see in part 2, you'll see how that sorts itself out. And that design, he's a synthetic human, and that helmet is an extrapolation of a design that my friend Ian McCaig did. Ian is our character designer, and he also worked, he designed Darth Maul and Queen Amidala and tons of other iconic characters in many movies. And but no, it's I just wanted. Doug Jones has an amazing quality of soul, of soulfulness, and he's usually plays creatures in TV shows and movies. You usually don't see his face, so I wanted to do a character where you would, because he's got such a great sensitive face. And so and that's how we did it. So and I didn't want it to be a huge makeup thing, so we took out his eyebrows, we hid his ears, we made the helmet. Originally we were going to have it be a bald cap with sort of a triangular metal thing here. That was Ian's original design, but the bald cap proved problematical, and so we went with the helmet, which I think is great. And but in one of the early trailers, we actually have Doug in the original version of the makeup, and it's interesting to see the variant. And but again, we may return to that down the road. We'll see what the future brings.
Yeah, it definitely won't be at the level of face covering as his character in Star Trek Discovery.
No.
With threat ganglia and everything. And all.
But interestingly, Doug shaves his head to play Saru, and so that might make it easier to do the makeup we originally envisioned for Dorn Nevin.
True. Spacefaring Civilization asks, how close are you in your Kickstarter campaign to success, and how can we help in addition to contributions? I can answer that question. Exactly. As of right now, we have raised $69,621, which means we are 87% funded.
Yay!
Yes, which is great. Only 13% to go.
Yes.
And that represents, 11,000, less than 11,000 to go.
Yes. But 2 days to go. So we have
so
we can't watch our Looney Tunes retrospective and celebrate.
It's doable, but we do need your help. Yes. And if you already contributed, if you can't contribute, the other thing that you can do to help is share the campaign.
Yes.
Let other people know, because we are trying to put out a little advertising, but our advertising dollars are
limited.
We don't are limited. So the more you can share with your friends, let your friends, especially your friends that like sci-fi and want to see more sci-fi, share with them, let them know about the campaign, especially your deep-pocketed friends.
Yeah, yes. Well, I can elaborate on that a bit. I mean, let everyone know, because it's not just science fiction fans. Because we have perks that include producer credits and acting credits and all sorts of stuff, even being a PA on the set. If someone has dreamed of being, a producer or a writer or a director or an actor, there are things that can be invaluable for that. And again, for those who are new to me, I've written for all the major studios and networks, hundreds of hours of television. I've been a professional writer for over 40 years. And the new book, Greenlighting Yourself, you can get an advanced copy of this with a T-shirt. On the front, it says Greenlighting Yourself. On the back, it says Mark Zickery's got your back. And that's a perk. The book isn't even out yet, and you can get an advanced copy. So, I mean, that book goes into how you have a career in Hollywood now. It's not like most books that tell you how to do it. If it was back, in the days of Daryl Zanuck and Louis B. Mayer, no,
Right.
The rules change so quickly that you really need something that addresses how it works now, not how it worked even 5 years ago.
Exactly. So we've only got a few minutes left. So guys, if you got any more questions, we've probably got time for like one or two more questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to spacecommandkickstarter.com, all one word, and that'll take you directly to our Kickstarter page. There are, I don't think we've ever had as many perks as we have in this campaign. There are so many perks, including brand new ones that we've never offered before, like the green lighting. Like Greenlighting Yourself, or
also the avatar, where you can just send a photo of your face, front view and side view, and they can and Joe Lawson can generate you in Space Command, in an image by the Paladin, in a Space Command uniform, whatever you want, on Mars, anywhere, and then you'll be in a crowd scene in Space Command, even though you won't have to be there physically at all.
Right. We'll put your digital face in the background,
yes,
and you get to keep the image too. Is that right? Yeah.
Not just keep the crowd scene image, which we would utilize, but also there will be a specific image generated of you. So
an avatar,
yes, I'd like a photo of me on Mars dressed in a Space Command uniform, or I'd like an image of me on the Paladin, or I'd like an image of me in a spacesuit floating out by Saturn. I mean, there's a ton of cool things, and so definitely check that out. And it's only $100. I mean, good Lord, or 97, not even 100. And I mean,
less than $100.
Yeah, I mean, my God, that's such a steal.
And those are limited too, right? I believe there's only 150. Yeah,
and so once they're gone, because I'm not the one doing it. Joe Lawson came up with that idea,
right? Because it's an add-on and a perk. So there's only 75 as an add-on and 75 as a perk.
Cool. But I mean, the main thing in terms of how you can help us is just any way you can think to help us. We agree. We like it.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many science fiction fans, space scientists, Hollywood hopefuls. There's any number of people who are going to dig being part of this, and also there's all the Twilight Zone fans and Twilight Zone companion fans and all that stuff. So I mean, there's tons of ways in.
I should mention this because Spacefaring Civilization asked about it before we go to our final question.
Sure,
so the add-ons for Kickstarter are kind of tricky, and I've answered this question to quite a few people privately, but just to say it publicly here. So the way Kickstarter is designed right now, the add-ons are a brand new thing. They haven't had actual add-ons before. It was just a thing that we used to do. So the way it works is a physical item add-on, like a DVD or a Blu-ray, can only be added to a physical item perk. So say you get the patches perk level, then you can add on the DVD. But if you get, say, the Star Trek Super Fan Club, that's all digital. Those are all digital perks. So you can't add a physical perk, a physical add-on to. It has to be the other way around.
Yeah.
So if you
Wow.
want the DVD and the Star Trek superfan, you have to get the DVD as the perk, and then add on the non-physical one as an
Yeah,
add-on.
but if you have any problems, just contact me or
Yes,
any of the team, and
we'll walk
you'll
you through it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and anyone who ever needs to get in touch with me, it's markzickery@gmail.com. It's very easy. So and I
right.
never mind that at all. I welcome it. Just
So,
yeah.
final question, because we are
Yes.
running out of time, or we are out of time, from Mark Lungo.
Oh, Mark.
And he wants to know, do you have any plans for more non-fiction books after greenlighting yourself?
No, I don't. But I didn't plan this book until the idea came to me. So the fun part of this career is I never know what I'm going to be doing particularly until I do it. But I'm very proud of all the books I've written, from either from the Twilight Zone books to the Magic Time novels to the Guillermo del Toro book to this. And so for me, it's more a qualitative thing of doing something that is on a level with the things I've done before. And also, that challenges me and is different from what I've done before. So I've talked for many years about the book I was going to write. I'm going to write about my friendship with Ray Bradbury. I've talked about writing a memoir, called My Televised Life. And also, I wrote a book about my mom that that isn't in print yet, but I wrote it, and it's very close to my heart. So yeah, we'll see what the future brings.
Yes, great. I'm just leaving a final chat here.
Great.
And thank you again for doing this Ask Me Anything. And thank you all out there for watching.
Thanks, guys.
One final super chat at the end from Orville Nation,
Thank you.
our
Thanks,
favorite
guys.
fans over there at
Yeah.
Orville Nation. Been watching all of the available Space Command footage. What a wonderful series. Again, many congrats.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
And just wait, you'll see there's a lot more to come, and I think you'll really love it because I love it and I love sharing it with you. So until next time, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Adam, for guiding me so I don't go out of control and and start speaking in tongues. But
You're welcome.
yeah, great. Well, so we'll see you all next time, and we do our Thursday simulcast on Mr. Sci-Fi with my roundtable. So
Yes.
we're there at 5:30 Pacific every week. And on we go. More adventures to come.
Yeah, and that'll be your last chance to ask live questions about the Kickstarter.
Yes.
Before this one ends. So again,
Friday.
spacecommandkickstarter.com.
Great. Thanks, guys. See you next time.